Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, Wes. Thanks, Brad, as well, for a great presentation. Great to be with you. Yeah, so hopefully you've got a little bit of an idea of the hint of where we're going during this presentation in the next few minutes. But let me unpack that before for you. I'm speaking to you from the east coast of the UK, where it's been sort of a mixed weather day here, but the sun has been out this afternoon, and it's 3:30 in the afternoon here. Anyway, before we get into too far, I want to give you a little commercial break. So just want to advertise the fact that there's lots of good stuff on the VSF YouTube video channel and also on the Nevion YouTube channel. They're both there. And Brad, who you've just seen speaking, you may not know this, and I didn't until 2 months ago, is a fantastic musician as well. So you can check out his playing and also some tutorials on things like how to make tea and coffee. Now that's the fun bit. There's lots of really great tech stuff for you to check out as well. So do go over to those places and check them out if you get a chance. Lots of great resources there. Okay, moving forwards. So we've been doing this broadcast thing in terms of television for well nigh 100 years now. This is almost 100 years ago. This picture of an electromechanical television transmission on shortwave radio. And, you'll probably see that things have come on a bit. I think we've increased the temporal and spatial resolution, and we've added some color and all sorts of stuff, and probably higher bandwidth audio in those 100 years. But just as an observation as we start, things have been evolving a lot since TV started. But certainly for the foreseeable past and the foreseeable future, quite a lot of this, these building blocks I've got on the screen here kind of ring true, and they ring true in the world we're in at the moment with what I call largely conventional appliance-based production systems, through to and including the more virtual world that we're heading towards as the processing becomes more and more virtualized and abstracted. But thinking about broadcast workflows for a minute, as we start to think about what we're doing now, the way we're heading, and what the end game could be. First of all, the traditional broadcast chain. So, as I grew up, this was kind of the way everything's been happening. So we had, events, be they studio events, sports events, entertainment events. A lot of them happening live or pre-produced, but typically there's production in a truck or in the gallery at the studio, going through a presentation area. An MCR goes out for transmission. Typically, certainly in the UK, has been dominantly until recently, digital terrestrial transmission, and that's how we get to the consumer. There's kind of a big evolution. Obviously, a lot of the origination, the content is the same. We've still got lots of great football matches. We've still got lots of great entertainment shows. Where we're moving towards now is, a lot of that processing may be based in a data center or a kit room rather than in, specific bespoke appliances. The control surfaces may be local, but they may be in a desk in someone's dining room at home. And typically the delivery, although still a lot of people, including myself, consume over digital terrestrial now, or digital cable, or digital satellite, the trend is towards, OTT internet connected delivery. And even what I call a lot of the conservative broadcasters in the areas that where near I live are talking about, a delivery plan where by the time we get to 2030, the consumption model is predominantly internet based. The other deliveries will be legacy by that point. So that's just mindful of that point. And I think the this slide sums it up well. Of course, the consumption on the go on different device types, as well as lean back television, is also a key element there. And of course, a lot of people moving from necessarily linear to on-demand consumption, or that's how they choose their content. So looking at what the industry has been saying about where things are going, there's a couple of interesting reports have come out this year. There's an IABM one here that looks about the investment drivers in tech. I'm not going to dwell on these. I just want to throw them out. You please do go and check these out and have a look at them. There's also a great one that the DPP did on live remote production that I had some involvement in. And again, lots of trends, and you'll see some really common themes on the move towards software-based, cloud-hosted, that may be on-prem or off-prem or public cloud-hosted production infrastructure. Also, we're seeing the new emerging transport technologies. This time a year ago, Nevion did a survey of broadcasters with regard to their view on 5G. And it was very interesting to see that actually there was a lot of optimism. Now, to my mind, 5G has fantastic potential as a connectivity technology. The way we are able to consume it at the moment in a relatively immature state really isn't fit for purpose for what I call high-tier broadcast. Certainly in the production loop, it's still already good for content distribution. Anyway, do go and check out that survey as well, because these are all elements that are coming together to help us actually shape the new way we do stuff. But fundamentally, what do broadcasters want? Broadcasters want to be able to actually, first of all, on the upside, they want to transform the way they work, and they want to up the production value. So, broadcasters are looking to do things better and better and better. At the same time, risk minimization is really important, and obviously reducing costs. That's like a given on all of the ways forward. And interestingly, it's been if we look at some of the initial moves to embrace IP technology in broadcast, some of them haven't necessarily been cost reducing, but they have actually significantly helped on things like workflow transformation, and we'll explore that. But moving forwards, those cost reductions are actually going to be significantly coming in as well. This is a picture that, if you've seen me present anything in the last year, I think I shoehorned this slide in somewhere in my deck, because I think it's a really good overview of certainly what I call the distributed production environment. And for me, that summarizes everything from content acquisition through the production route to where we get to primary distribution. And the great thing about where we're at now with this is, because the facility connectivity, be that in a physical building or be that in an OB truck or wherever that is new builds are now being done with IP, and there's lots of retrofitting of IP and facility infrastructure into facilities. That gives a lot of flexibility in terms of formatting, etc., and all of those things. And because we're using IP connectivity over the wide area network as well, suddenly we have a fantastic flexibility to actually do lots of different sharing of resources. Oh, I can see someone's popped in there with their camera on. Hello, Sergio. The resource sharing is one of the key benefits of IP production, and there are three key elements that are important. Sergio, would you mind turning your camera off? Thank you. Three key sharing elements that really give big gains in terms of cost savings and up in the production values. One is the sharing of the real estate. There's the sharing of the processing, and the sharing of the people. One really big project that Nevion has been proud to be involved in the last 18 months has been for discovery. And I think this is I'm not going to go into any detail on this, and we've got case studies we can share with you, but I just want to put this one slide up. And the reason I think this is a great one, because just thinking back to that resource sharing and leveraging benefit and true cost saving, this is a key example, because what this is doing is actually the processing resources are located in two resilient, redundant hubs in two locations in Europe. And then there's some 12 countries that can consume that processing resource and dynamically make use of the connectivity and all of the processing resources and the capabilities and share resources. So that whole resource sharing, the people are distributed, and the equipment is actually being shared, and the processing resources are being shared. That's a key case, and we were proud to be the orchestrators of that solution. That whole story, we've developed a new picture in recent times to try and overarchingly show some of those other bits I was talking about coming in here. So if you look top right there, you've got the home control surface there. COVID has really accelerated people taking the risk of home working. And I say risk because not because it's risky per se, apart from possibly the integrity of your broadband, single-ended broadband connection to someone's home, but the risk in terms of just trying new things from an inherently conservative broadcast community. You'll see there we've got remote connections via 5G on the top left. We've got an event location or a regional facility bottom left, which has got some processing in it. We've got obviously a wealth of interconnectivity in the middle, including both private and public cloud processing. And then the central facility, which has processing itself, as well as control surfaces and all of the stuff you would expect a central facility to have. But this evolution of how distributed production is going to look moving forwards, I think this is actually a really good representation of that. You're kind of where you operate the infrastructure is that, you're agnostic. You can do it from home, you can do it from the central facility, you can do it at the location. Where the processing is done, it may be done in public or private cloud. It may be done, some of it at the event, some of it in a central facility, or a mixture of all of those. And you may not even be able to need to know or be able to tell what's happening. That's important. Now, Brad's touched on this a little bit already. Broadcast is starting to using not only IP technology, but IT technology. And it's important to actually think about the benefit we're leveraging from, everything from switch fabrics to, existing well-proven timing infrastructure mechanisms to existing topologies for switch fabrics and distributing data and existing server technology. All of those things we're now starting to leverage. And there's been some great work. And again, you've had some hints of this in some of the stuff Brad's been talking about here. You've had some hints of this with all the stuff that's been happening between SMPTE and AMWA and VSF, specifically looking at evolving but what I call the data plane standards and the control plane standards for how we actually do broadcast with IP infrastructure. And TR 1001, the JTNM reference document there, which was mentioned again in the last presentation, highly important. What was 2110 aiming to do? This is just my take. This is not an official slant on it. This is my take on some of the things that SMPTE was looking to achieve in the evolution of 2110 and the great work that the VSF did in the stuff feeding into that. Lots of great stuff. It's made us agnostic to the format of the video and the audio. So we've got a transport mechanism. Also, as broadcasters and as broadcast people, we don't need to worry about the underlying infrastructure. We haven't got to worry about the data eye on the line. That's taken care of by the Ethernet interfacing of the switches, etc. We just worry about actually handing the data off. And fundamentally, one of the other key things about 2110 is we went essence-based. If you're watching this on live or you've only just joined in the last few minutes, then I'd encourage you to look at Brad's presentation and specifically the AMWA NMS Network Media Systems template. That's a great drawing that captures a lot of detail and elements of the production ecosystem. Moving on from that, I just want to show a drawing. And again, this is the other drawing that you've probably may have seen me put up from time to time. And this is because I think this is probably what the end game is heading towards for broadcast live production. Let me just unpack it just for 30 seconds before I explain a few more things. So we obviously have acquisition on the left-hand side there. That's something that happens in real time. You've got cameras and microphones capturing the action, as it happens in real time. You've got the consumer at the far end that by the time they're actually watching it on their iPad, their iPhone, or Android phone or whatever, or on a lean back television or in a cinema, wherever they're actually watching it as a human in real time. You've also got the production team, the people in the gallery, the people in the sound booth doing the production. They need to see and hear that stuff in real time. But apart from that, the production chain needs to be time aware, but we don't need
You're losing my marbles, me.
Real time. Oh, someone else is unmuted. Don't know what's happening there. So if we move on from that and think about, okay, so if we're moving to more of a software-based time-aware media processing chain, then there is actually convergence between what we're doing at the bottom, which is the stuff that I've been doing for many years, and many of you have the live production workflow, that becomes more and more synergy with the file-based production that happens in parallel or alongside the live media production. And if we look at this diagram, you can actually see in a very simple form that the delineation between the, if you like, that stream, the live stream at the top there, shown in a virtual world, and what happens with content management and file production and file-based editing at the bottom. And actually, if you think about as more and more of that top chain becomes soft and compute-based, then there's more and more benefits and synergy and interaction between live and nonlinear editing. Specifically, as we start to think about that, this is a train set I've been talking about for the last six or 7 years, I think, various things. I actually got it out again last week for the first time at a presentation, first time for 4 years. So I thought I'd show it one more time. We've got this train. We've been doing digital video for the last 30 years with SDI. We then just wrapped SDI in IP for 2022-6. We had a couple of hybrids with TR03 and 04. And now we're working with 2110, which is essence-based native essences of the media elements that are being transported individually for the production with timing information associated. That's well and good. All of those, however, so far have followed a linear real-time video transport, which is pretty well akin to that 1928 electromechanical system that I showed you at the beginning. We've had this concept of linear delivery or linear time delivery of the video data. And you'll see a server on the right-hand side, as we move to this more software-based processing, we start to question whether the way we actually hand data off once we get into a virtual world is actually the optimal way to do it. So as we go into that, from that previous diagram, you remember, of that time aware but software based infrastructure, then the way we actually handle the data handoffs is probably going to need to change to actually make it work well for compute. Just a couple of shameless plugs here. There's some relevant work going on within the Video Services Forum. I just want to unpack a couple of these for you. There's the 2110 over WAN, which we've been working on hard for over 2 years now. And if you tune back in at 11:30 Eastern tomorrow, I'm going to give an update on that. So I'm not going to talk any more about it now, but just want to say we'll give an update tomorrow and come back and hear an update about where we've got to on that work. There's also some work on what I call ground to cloud, cloud to ground. And this is another work group that John Mayock's chairing, and I'm supporting on that. And specifically, we've been looking at how do we get broadcast data real time, low latency to and from the cloud. And then just as I was alluding to in that previous slide, how do we actually hand data between virtual processing instances? On a related topic, we were very excited to be part of the very first low latency demo to and from cloud infrastructure, which was shown ready for a customer last summer, using JPEG XS compression, which, if you're not aware, is sub-millisecond compression. So it becomes almost insignificant in terms of time, but gives you up to 10-to-1 compression for broadcast flows, which is very, very useful for getting in and out of cloud connectivity. So that's a useful piece. Coming back to the virtualized processing, as we look in the end game, all these software instances in the cloud. The reason I put this picture up is just to try and very simply, again, unpack a little bit. Those red arrows, the concept is those are the linear delivered video a la 2110, going to and from our virtual software infrastructure. Those blue ribbony arrows are the more ethereal compute optimized data handoff, which still needs to, as I said, be time aware, but doesn't necessarily need to be real time in the same way that we've been understanding and pushing video data in the last 80 years. I also have this kind of utopian dream, thinking about the end game of the concept of having, a multi-vendor ecosystem that exists in the virtual infrastructure. Obviously, many of us have got various software building blocks, but where we're hopefully heading towards as an industry is the ability for us to actually have different functions provided by best of breed vendors with resources that are interoperable. So that's kind of a part of the end dream. Just to say, another key part of broadcasting, which we've alluded to already, is events production. And that's one thing is actually the facilities where you're actually doing your standard production, but events production, and that's changed a lot over the last few years, and especially in the last 12 months really. Traditionally, this was kind of how an event was always done. You had a large truck, or at least one large truck. You had all of your sources, and you've got your gallery, you've got all of your audio and video production happening on site, and you bring back your production video and audio plus a few ISO feeds, maybe in some return visions back for cues and stuff. But fundamentally, the stuff is done at the event and move forwards. What we've then added a lot of in COVID in the last year is from home remote surface control. So people doing various parts of the production and controlling stuff from a long way away, but typically with the processing kit still being located at the event, largely speaking. We've then actually already before COVID, for some infrastructures, we've been seeing more of the case of taking backhauling, what I call long hauling, all of the individual video and audio feeds to a central location with some reverse visions and tally and RCP stuff all happening in there, but basically consuming high bandwidth in the wide area network, but actually being able to long haul all of those. And that's been very successfully used both pre-COVID and since then. And obviously that means you need less stuff at site because the processing is removed. Then obviously we're starting to see the cusp of this, for live production, the cloud being used as the processing. You're actually controlling it either from a central facility or from home with remote surfacing, etc. But the crunching is done in the cloud, and again, lightweight at the event. But then typically, and I think this is where we're heading to, is this concept where there's some processing capability in multiple locations. So the idea is that the users of the system don't need to worry about what's being processed where. But if it's optimal to pre-groom, to pre-switch some visions and some audios at the event location, in some compute resource, then feed them into cloud infrastructure, or even have some processing happening, sharing resources in a central facility. All of those things can happen. The key thing is actually abstracting that. So this comes back to this model. I'm not going to dwell on this. I think you get the picture here. This concept, processing in many locations, largely speaking, heading towards software-based processing. The important thing is the abstraction of the user from needing to worry about what's being processed where. And that's the key element there. In terms of the adoption of new ways of working into the market, I think we're seeing that move up what I call the tiers of production. Obviously, the stuff at the top, that's the ultra high value content, people are inherently more conservative and cautious and risk averse to some degree. But as this technology is being proven, as it is already very effectively in lower tier productions, it's moving up these tiers in terms of normalization of use. Timing challenge. I have to always have a slide on timing. Don't worry, I'm coming into land now. Just want to say that along with some various colleagues across the industry, we're having some discussions on timing planes, how we can make timing work automatically in a distributed production ecosystem with multiple timing planes. We have to be able to do better than what we've been able to in the first generation of 2110 infrastructure. And as we move to cloud-based and software-based production, we need to be on top of this as well. So there's more challenges in place there. But what we need fundamentally, we want to be able to do whatever we want to do in terms of the acquisition, the operation, and the delivery of the production, completely location independent. That's key. That gives us all of those savings. The users need to be abstracted from the, if you like, the tech and how it's being done. Obviously, you need the quality. Latency obviously becomes a question. There's several threads on that. We're not even going to unpack that, but that's probably one of the key parameters that we need to work to make sure we optimize as we start to long distance more and more of the element. And obviously, more flexible commercial models. That's certainly a cry from the customers. So this in my mind is the end game we're heading towards. We're obviously got a way on the journey to get there, but I think we're making exciting progress. And what's exciting about being in this industry is it's always changing. So it only remains for me to invite you, when we were allowed to meet up, for a very nice cup of tea, which I would love to give you. So anyway, hopefully that's been of some inspiration to get you going on these sessions today. Look forward to chatting to some of you in the room in a couple of minutes. Back to you, Wes.